Welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. Here now is your host, Jennifer Miele, Chief Communications Officer and Managing Director of Evangelization of the Diocese of Greensburg.
Welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections on WHJB. I'm your host, Jennifer Miele. We appreciate so much when organizations and entities reach out to WHJB to appear on Westmoreland Community Connections. Their input and the knowledge that they impart to Greater Westmoreland County is so important. And that's why I was very happy to hear from the Westmoreland County Community Development Department. Specifically today, I am talking with Londi Dandar, and she is the program coordinator for a very important project in Westmoreland County. That's called the Lead Paint Hazard Control and Healthy Homes Program. Londi, thank you so much for joining us today on this important topic.
Thank you for having us. I should say us, Jennifer. This is a brand new grant to Westmoreland County. So just to kind of go back, some of you may have noticed there was a notice that Westmoreland County has received $3.4 million from the federal government to basically test and remediate homes in Westmoreland County that were built before 1978 and that have a young child under the age of 6 or a pregnant woman visiting or living in the home. Well, if they're visiting, they would have to be visiting regularly, like at least 6 hours a week, 60 hours a week or more. And this program does focus on low to moderate income families.
This is very interesting. So let's go back a little bit and talk about why Westmoreland County decided to apply for a grant like this. Was it something that you came out and you saw amongst a list of grants, or was it done to tackle a specific problem? How did this come about?
Well, that's a very good question. Our deputy director here at Community Planning Development is Jenna Thomas. She worked at a prior municipality in Sharon who had a lead program. So she was actually the one in charge there and pretty much single-handedly, ran a lead program and saw the benefits. With Westmoreland County having over 70% of their homes built before 1978, she felt that when she took on her role here in Westmoreland County, that she felt that we really should have this program up and running in our area.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great program. So in other words, she saw the benefits that were happening in another community and said, we have to go after this.
Yes, I do want to mention too, this is something we had to seek out, apply for, but Westmoreland County had to meet all the requirements necessary to be awarded this grant. I think we're like the 25th, there's only 25 or 26 counties that have this grant in Pennsylvania. So, and it's competitive. So we are very fortunate to have it. It is a limited grant right now. It's over, believe we have it for a little more than 2.25 years at this point, because we're still trying to get things up and running, but we're almost there. But we believe that if we do a good job, that it's very possible that HUD, the federal government, will, award us a new term.
So back to the late 1970s, Can you teach us a little bit about the use of lead paint and what the dangers are? And then later on, we can talk a little bit about those changes that were made, in terms of legislation. So go ahead, take us back to the 70s there.
Okay, 1978 was the stopping point. They put an end to using lead in residential paint. However, they knew for quite some time that it was dangerous. The reason why lead was attractive was because it was relatively low in cost, and it also produced long-lasting paint. So it was the benefits were, something that they wanted to, utilize. So the paint was long-lasting. It was relatively inexpensive. They used this paint, and what they have found, and I think, if we want to go back a little bit in history, I think some of us, not all of us, will remember how they used to have lead and gas. And between, putting an end to using lead and gas, things like, stopping the use of lead in residential paint, and a lot of other things that they have implemented, they've seen a drastic decline in lead poisoning in children. And I want to mention that's the whole goal of the program, is to prevent lead poisoning in children. And with that being said, why children under 6? The focus is children under 6 or pregnant women. And the reason for this is that their bodies are small. They're developing at an exponential rate. They actually absorb lead much more efficiently than an adult, up to 40% more than an adult would absorb. And lead is kind of tricky where it accumulates. So you may not see symptoms right away. It may take 30 years before you start seeing something. So it's kind of like a silent
poison. Silent.
Yeah, poison or something because that's the hard message to get across. I mean, just because your children aren't showing any symptoms right now, it doesn't mean that they're not being affected by lead. It's stored in their bones. I'm actually a special education teacher, and a lot of the students that we treated and worked with in special education are symptoms that you would see in someone who was lead poisoned, like learning disabilities, low IQ, cognitive impairment, just inability to focus, ADHD, ADD, behavioral issues because they cannot control their impulses. Lead actually damages, I would say, their central nervous system. It can affect the heart, kidney, and liver too. So, it's really important. I mean, the prevention is there because once the damage occurs or once you start seeing these symptoms, Jennifer, you can't reverse them. So that's why there's no mandatory testing here in the state of Pennsylvania for children but the CDC does, recommend that all children are tested at the ages of 1 and again at the ages of 2, and if preferably when they start school, so they can kind of catch these things before they occur, before they become a big problem.
Oh my goodness. It's so interesting, to hear about this because, I mean, it's really something that you never think about. And, as I learn more as you're talking about the dangers of lead paint, so you can see why the industry wanted it. I guess it's called a rust inhibitor, right? So it was good paint, right?
Yes,
it was good paint.
Yeah, it was long lasting. It was good paint. It was durable, and it was relatively inexpensive compared, so it was attractive, an attractive product for them. So they wanted to but they did realize that it wasn't good. People could be poisoned by it. But actually just pulled up an article about that whole thing, about how lead paint was, in residential paint for a lot longer than it should have been. But, just like, we know now, we know the effects of lead. There's been direct correlation between if a child's lead, this was fascinating to me, if a child's exposed to lead in a younger age, by the time they reach their young teenage years or young adult years, they're 15% more likely to end up in a criminal justice system because, again, it impairs their ability to control their impulses.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's much more, and let's face it, if your child is struggling in school, and all of, not able to control their behavior and a lot of other things, you're not really setting them up for success. This is something that could follow them throughout their lifetime. So it's so important for them to catch it early. But with that being said, I have a lot of applicants that already have talked to a pediatrician, have already done the testing, and the pediatrician found elevated blood lead levels. And right now, that's considered anything above 3.5 micrograms per deciliter. That's what the CDC states, and the PA Department of Health has recently adopted. Used to be 5 micrograms per deciliter, so that was a little bit higher, but now they're considering anything at 3.5 or above something to be alerted and monitored. And at that point, you're going to start looking at where is it coming from. And most children spend most of their time at home. So that's the first place you want to check, which I just wanted to say, that's where our program comes in, so we have part of the application process, we ask that 6 months before, if they're approved go through the eligibility process, the application and so forth, and provide their supporting documentations. If they're eligible, we ask that 6 months before, within that window of we start construction, that we have the child tested for lead. It's a finger prick. There can be venous draws. It's more conclusive. So if they do a finger prick and it shows an elevated level, more than likely the doctor is going to want a venous draw, but you would want to that anyways, if you found that your child's level is above that. But typically it's just a finger prick, and it allows us to see if a child has an elevated blood level already. If they do, they actually are priority and they're on top of the list. So we want to take care of their home as soon as possible.
So is part of this grant, am I hearing then part of this grant is remediation, or how does that part?
Yes. So if a candidate goes through basically application, then they have to provide supporting documentation to prove their income and, identity too, like they'll need child's birth certificates and so forth. But I go through all of that with them. If they are eligible, they will receive a letter saying that they've been approved. And then we will have our housing specialist here, Rick Mills. He will come out, he'll make an appointment, schedule an appointment, and he will do a pre-housing inspection. So what he's doing there is kind of looking at the whole scope of everything, inside, outside, in the soil, where then he will give a preliminary report to the risk assessor, who comes out as a certified risk assessor, comes out and will do a thorough testing of the interior, exterior, and soil. And I will tell you, to get a certified risk assessor, there's not that many in the area. You can go on the EPA website, type in your zip code, and pull up anyone who's certified to do testing. You definitely want someone who is EPA registered, because these tests are typically thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's and it's not like it's not a 15-minute thing. They'll come in inside, outside, and soil, and depending how large your property is or whatnot, it could take 2 to 3 hours. But they're doing hundreds of tests, and then after the testing's done, the risk assessor does a very thorough report. It gives a copy to the tenant or the homeowner, and also to they will come up with it goes to the contractor for a scope of work, how they will address what was mentioned or listed in the risk assessor's report, schedule an appointment for the contractor to come out and do the work. Depending on the scope of how long it's going to take, the homeowner knows ahead of time. It's more, if it's going to take longer than a day, Jennifer, they will have to relocate. The homeowners or the people that live in the apartment will have to relocate. We recommend they stay with a family member or friend, but as a last resort, we do help them with. We'll make arrangements for a hotel for them to stay at, and provide a supplement for food if needed. But the reason for this is because when they're doing this work, they're going to be disturbing lead areas where dust is going to be lead dust will be in the air, and you won't be able to see it, and it's very dangerous. So, and then after that's completed, within an hour of the construction work that's completed, the risk assessor comes back and does what they call a clearance test to make sure all the lead hazards have been addressed and there's no longer an issue with lead. So it's lead safe. And then the housing specialist will reach back out to the homeowner and say, you and your family can return back home.
Wow. What a process. And
it is. I mean, but
it's a lot of work on the county's part. I mean, that is a tremendous undertaking. So, obviously Westmoreland County, and after the break here, we're going to talk about how and why we qualified, but so far so good. Is it going well? And you're able to find these homes and mitigate these places?
Mm-hmm. Well, right now, like you said, it is, I say complicated or a little complex of a program because there's so many steps. Okay. So we are just on the brink of getting started. We are waiting for a couple of approvals that have to do with the construction aspect of it, because everything has to be approved by the commissioners, and every aspect is checked and double checked and, approved. So we do have a wait list. We do have applicants ready to go. Some have been qualified And we have completed pre-housing inspections where the housing specialist went out and kind of assessed the whole general situation. And then we have had certified risk assessors go out and do risk assessments.
Wow.
So we're waiting on the construction part of it. The contractors, we have the contractors, we have them trained in lead abatement. They're trained and certified in lead abatement. We paid for that training. Like you said, there's a lot of different components, so, it's been a little bit of a process getting things set up, but we're really close to, we're hoping by August to get move forward with the construction, hoping. So
Londi Dander is the program coordinator for the Lead Paint Hazard Control and Healthy Homes program, a new grant that recently came to Westmoreland County Community Development. We've been talking about the process here, very interesting process about lead poisoning and how the county is working with this grant to identify homes and mitigate the risk, particularly to children. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. If you have a suggestion for a topic, or if your nonprofit organization would like to be featured on this program, call us during regular business hours at 724-216-1200.
Welcome back to Westmoreland Community Connections on WHJB. I'm your host, Jennifer Miele, talking today with Londi Dander. She's the program coordinator for the Lead Paint Hazard Control and Healthy Homes program. She took us back to the late 1970s when the use of lead paint in homes in residential areas was eliminated because of the danger of lead poisoning to children. She's talked to us about the signs and the symptoms and the long-term complications to this. And recently, Westmoreland County applied and became the recipients of $3.4 million to identify and mitigate this risk, particularly for young children under the age of 6. Whose families qualify for this. It's such an interesting program. So this grant application, did you have to say about how many homes you think were built before 1978 in the grant? Or, what was really some of the selling points of why you guys think you were identified for this grant?
Well, I think we didn't have to say, it's pretty much, they knew that we had, it was mentioned that at least 70% of our homes here in Westmoreland County were built before 1978. We did, to touch upon numbers, as far as we agreed to remediate 142 homes in that time span. However, it has taken a little longer to get set up. We're probably about a year into it already, the grant, but we still have plenty of time to, remediate plenty of homes. And we do have a wait list, but we have plenty of room to, remediate more. I think something else that comes into play as well that has to be mentioned is this is a tough time with as far as, getting supplies from contractors or whatnot. So we expect a little bit of delays, so that's going to be something to work against us. The cost of, things have increased since the pandemic, and just getting supplies like windows, for instance. And I think that I want to go into, we talked a little bit about, the process of the overall process application, providing supporting documents, the inspection, pre-housing, and also risk assessment, and then the clearance test. But the next thing about what kind of remediation are we talking about? What kind of work could they do on our home if we do have lead? So some of the things would be like paint stabilization. If you have chipping, chalking, cracking, peeling paint, if there was lead paint underneath there, the dust could be coming out. You're not going to see that. Going back to why the program focuses on young children, Jennifer, is because that dust settles on the ground. Children or young children crawl on the floor, play on the floor, then they put their toys in their hands and their mouth. So now they're ingesting the lead. Or they could be playing in bare dirt or soil outside. And if that has lead from paint that was chipping on the outside that it contained lead and rain washed over it, it's now in the ground. So every time your child plays in it, or say you even have pets, they can all drag that back into the house. So there's a lot of different things. But if there's lead in windows or doors, like lead paint on windows and doors, many times they will just replace them. There's paint stabilization. Sometimes they'll put siding on, and everything is approved by the homeowner, like a scope of works, gone over with the homeowner or the landlord prior to doing any work. They'll do minor structural repairs. And this is part that I want to touch on. It's called the Lead Paint Hazard Control and Healthy Homes Program. I say Lead Safe Westmoreland for short because it's a mouthful, but it's actually the Lead Paint Hazard Control is one grant, and it's the main grant. I call it the pilot. The co-pilot is the Healthy Homes portion. So when that risk assessor goes in there and checks for lead, he's also looking for other hazards like, say, moisture, radon, even possibly lead in water supply, in your service lines. So if they find lead in your home, lead has to be there. If they find these other hazards, they may be able to address them in the Healthy Homes portion. It's a much smaller grant, but it's something that can work with the lead grant. And it can also help with hazards like, anyone who has asthma or allergies, and there's like I said, air quality problems or whatnot, they could address those. So that's nice. That's a very nice, overall. So when by the time they're finished, your home should be totally safe for your family to live in without any hazards.
It's so interesting. So if I'm at home and I'm listening to this now, and I realize that I probably have a home where there is lead paint, and I do have a child 6 or under, and depending on my the finances of my home or of my family, I might want to look more into this. How do they get a hold of you? Where do they call?
Sure.
What do they do?
Sure, absolutely. They can first of all, you could go to the county website here. I'll give you my phone number first. It's 724-830-3366. Or they can email me at L and then Dandar, DANDAR at co.westmoreland.pa.us. And if you just hear this and you would like to know more information before you even call, so you can ask questions or, just kind of check it out yourself, you can go to CO. It would be www.co.westmoreland.pa.us/leadsafe.
Yeah, especially if you pop on the Westmoreland County website, you'll be able to find the Lead Safe page.
Yes.
And there's sort of a little checklist there for qualifications of the program. If you have the flyer, and we'll make sure we post the flyer on the WHJB Facebook page, so people can come and check out the flyer. I think that's really important. It gives you the basic qualifications for the program. Was your home built before 78? Talk about the household annual income, child under 6, pregnant woman living in the household. So this is great. The flyer is just perfect. It has the QR code that takes you right to the website. Very nice.
I want to mention a little bit more to talk a little bit about the visiting aspect. Say you're we recognize a lot of grandparents or caregivers now, say they watch their grandchildren or, you're babysitting and it's more than 6 hours a week, 60 hours or more per year. So that's what they define as visiting regularly. If you meet the other qualifications, live in Westmoreland County, home built before 1978, income, all of that, you could qualify too. So it's not just if that child lives there, but if the child spends a lot of time there. And with that being said, if a child's tested or shows that they have an elevated blood lead level, we test their home and they don't. The first starting point is going to be, where do they spend most of their time? Most children is at home. It could mean a grandparent's house. We don't know. But it's a process of elimination. And say it wasn't their home, but say they go to mom and dad work and they go to their grandparents' house often for daycare or childcare, and they test the grandparents' house. And maybe they have, if they meet the other qualifications, they may have lead in their home, and that's where the child is being exposed. So it's a great program. If you're eligible, it doesn't cost the applicant anything. And right now, as far as I know, and that may change as the grant goes on, the landlord they're not required at this point to contribute anything. Many of the grantees that have received this grant, if there's like X amount of dollars for, repairs, they're, requiring the landlord to do the first 10%, because it is their property. And if they and if that happens and it is a landlord, the only two things they have to agree to is, one, keep the rent affordable. We don't want to, they don't want to put the money into, it's an investment to help the family. So they don't want to put these improvements into the home and then their landlord turn around and raise the rent. Now this family that lived there before to low to moderate income can no longer stay there. That's not what we want. So they have to agree to keep the rent affordable for 3 years. They also, if that tenant would happen to move out, they would have to market that home as a lead safe home, ideal for a child under 6, and low to moderate income. So that's pretty much the only thing they're at this time requiring from landlords. But, it's a great opportunity. And I think the hardest part about this whole program, Jennifer, is just getting the awareness that lead is still very much a problem here. I have a lot of people on our wait list that have children with elevated blood lead levels. And just to give you an idea of how big of a problem it is. I mean, probably if you say lead, everyone's going to say Flint, Michigan. That's the first thing that comes into everyone's mind, the water supply lead issue that they had. You're familiar with that, right?
Yes.
I think because it was so exposed, through the media and everything pretty much everyone's aware of that. But do you realize that children in Pennsylvania are being affected 2.3 times higher than that whole episode in Flint, Michigan at the peak?
Wow.
So we are actually worse, 2.3% times higher than what they, at their peak of their crisis. We have children that are being lead poisoned every day.
Nice.
So it is still a problem. And I think what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from talking to different applicants is that I believe, even if I hear, we don't have lead paint, we painted over it. That's great. As long as it's not chipping, chalking, cracking, peeling, as long as it's intact, it's probably safe. But where the windows and doors open and close, friction, if it's wearing down the outer layer and it's deteriorated, that lead dust can still come out from underneath layer. And where you see a lot of children are having issues when the parents do renovations on their own and don't use proper lead safe practices, a lot of children end up in emergency room because they didn't realize they had lead in the house.
I mean, this is just so interesting. And one more time, can you give everyone at home, as we wrap up here, your phone number and the web address again?
Sure. It's my name's Londi Dandar. I'm the lead safe coordinator. 724-830-3366. You can go to the Westmoreland County website, but a more direct link would be the www.co.westmoreland.pa.us/lead safe. And that's all one word, lead safe.
And how long will this program run? What is the timeline here?
We have a little more than 2.25 years. But if we can show that we're putting this money into good use and we're helping these families, remediate their homes and make them safe, it's very possible we could be awarded another grant. And just to Allegheny County, our neighbor, that has really helped us a lot getting things set up as far as guidance. They've had this program for about 5 years.
And that is amazing. Londi Dandar, you are so knowledgeable, and they are so lucky to have someone like you running the Lead Paint Hazard Control and Healthy Homes program, Lead Safe Westmoreland, a program of Westmoreland County Community Development, recently securing a $3.4 million grant to identify lead paint exposure in residential areas before 1978. Londi, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
I'm your host, Jennifer Miele. We appreciate you listening to WHJB. And as always, we'll talk to you next week on Westmoreland Community Connections.
This has been Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings in and around Westmoreland County. Join us again next week on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. HJB. HJB. HJB.